Do you ever feel a quiet pull toward being alone, even when you're surrounded by people? A moment where your whole body, not just your mind, whispers, "I need space." And maybe you never said it out loud, because the world around you often misreads silence as distance and solitude as loneliness. But what if that instinct isn't a flaw? What if it's a hidden strength, a sign of a mind that moves differently, more deeply, more intentionally than most people realize? For too long, choosing solitude has been mistaken for shyness or avoidance or antisocial behavior. But the truth is far more complex. People who seek out solitude aren't running away from the world. They're running towards something: clarity, peace, focus, emotional restoration. And to understand them, you have to step inside a space most people never notice because they're too busy filling every quiet moment with noise. Imagine this. A person walks into their room after a long day. They drop their keys, sit down for a moment, and feel a wave of relief wash over them. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because, finally, they can breathe without performing. They can think without interruption. They can exist without adjusting themselves for anyone else. That moment of aloneness isn't emptiness for them. It's oxygen. Most people think solitude is just the absence of company. But for those who truly seek it, it's the presence of something deeper, a connection to themselves that's impossible to feel when the world gets too loud. And here's where it gets interesting. Solitude seekers aren't simply quiet people. They're deliberate people. Their relationship with alone time isn't an accident. It's a choice, a psychological preference shaped by how their mind processes emotion, how their nervous system manages stimulation, and how their inner world organizes meaning. They don't default to solitude because they're afraid of others. They move towards solitude because that's where their thoughts become clearer, their emotions settle, and their identity becomes sharper. Think about the way you feel after spending hours around people, even people you like. For some individuals, that time leaves them energized, alive, electric. But for solitude seekers, social interaction, even positive interaction, drains something internal. Not in a dramatic way, but subtly, like a phone battery that looks full but quietly loses power with every conversation, every expression, every moment of attentiveness. And the reason isn't negativity. It's sensitivity, emotional sensitivity, cognitive sensitivity, sensory sensitivity. People who seek solitude often have highly responsive nervous systems. Their minds absorb details others overlook: tone, facial tension, subtle shifts in energy, unspoken expectations. And absorbing so much, day after day, becomes heavy. Their solitude isn't coldness. It's recalibration. Imagine the mind as a lake. For many people, the surface stays smooth even when the world tosses stones. But for solitude seekers, every interaction creates ripples. Every emotion leaves waves. And eventually, those waves need stillness to settle. Alone time is the stillness. And once the lake calms, something beautiful happens. People who seek solitude think more clearly. They process experiences more deeply. They understand themselves more honestly. Because solitude is not a retreat from the world. It's a return to clarity, awareness, self-connection. But here's where the story gets even more fascinating. Solitude seekers aren't just emotionally reflective. They're often incredibly mentally active. Their brains are constantly building, imagining, analyzing, creating. Neuroscientists have found that solitude activates the brain's default mode network, the system responsible for deep thinking, creativity, imagination, and introspection. When solitude seekers are alone, their brains enter a state that is richer, more vibrant, and more alive than when they are surrounded by noise. Their prefrontal cortex relaxes. Their amygdala, the emotional alarm system, calms. Their dopamine pathways activate a quiet, satisfying sense of pleasure. Not excitement, not thrill, something gentler, something deeper, contemplation. This is why solitude becomes a birthplace of creativity. Why so many writers, artists, thinkers, scientists, and innovators describe needing uninterrupted time. Alone time isn't avoidance for them. It's the environment where their mind unlocks, where scattered thoughts gather into insights, where ideas grow roots. But solitude seekers don't just use alone time for creativity. They also use it for emotional alignment. When something overwhelming happens, they process it internally before talking about it. When they're confused, they think their way through it. When they're hurt, they withdraw, not to punish others, but to understand themselves better. And this self-understanding is one of the defining features of solitude seekers. While others look outward for validation, distraction, or belonging, solitude seekers look inward for grounding, clarity, and authenticity. Their inner world isn't an escape. It's home. Yet there's a paradox here. Even though solitude seekers are often emotionally intelligent, deeply empathetic, and highly self-aware, they are frequently misunderstood. Others might label them distant, aloof, uninterested, because society confuses visibility with presence. But solitude seekers don't show themselves loudly. They show themselves deeply, and their connections reflect that. Their relationships are fewer, but stronger. Their friendships are not casual, they're intentional. They don't open up easily, but when they do, they offer a level of depth, loyalty, and presence that is rare. They don't speak often, but when they speak truth. Solitude teaches them not to waste words. It teaches them to wait until they have something real to say. But solitude, like anything meaningful, exists on a spectrum. Some people use alone time to recharge and return to the world with more energy. Others, especially those carrying old emotional wounds, may start using solitude as protection. There is a difference between healthy solitude and emotional withdrawal. Healthy solitude restores you. Unhealthy solitude hides you. And the line between the two is delicate. A solitude seeker may need time alone, but still values connection. They may disappear for a while, but they come back when they're ready. Their solitude has openness, flexibility, curiosity, but someone withdrawing from the world feels closed, afraid, heavy, trapped in their own mind instead of nourished by it. That's why understanding your relationship with solitude matters. Because solitude isn't a one-size-fits-all experience. It has shades, depths, motivations, and recognizing those layers helps you use solitude for growth, not escape. But here's the beautiful part. The world is beginning to shift. In a society that is constantly connected, constantly scrolling, constantly responding, constantly performing, solitude is becoming a radical act of self-preservation. More and more people are realizing that stepping away doesn't disconnect you from life. It brings you closer to your own life. It helps you hear your own voice again. It helps you feel your own emotions without interference. It helps you find meaning in a world built on distraction. And maybe this is the real reason solitude seekers are misunderstood, because they have discovered something most people are too afraid to feel: themselves. Solitude is where you face your thoughts. Solitude is where you face your truth. Solitude is where you face the parts of yourself that don't speak in noise. And not everyone is ready for that. But solitude seekers are. And they carry a gift because of it. They understand themselves more deeply. They protect their energy more wisely. They choose relationships more intentionally. They experience life not through noise, but through clarity. And if that sounds like you, if you've ever craved a quiet moment despite a busy world, if being alone feels like returning home instead of running away, then you're not strange. You're not distant. You're not broken. You're simply tuned to a different frequency, one that values depth over volume, meaning over noise, presence over performance. The world will always demand your attention. It will always try to pull you outward into chaos, into urgency, into endless noise. But solitude will always wait for you. Calm, quiet, patient. A place where your mind can settle, where your heart can breathe, where your identity can unfold. So ask yourself this: what's your relationship with solitude? Is it a refuge? A creative space? A mirror? A sanctuary? A teacher? And maybe the more important question is this: when was the last time you let yourself be alone long enough to hear your inner world speak? Because solitude isn't loneliness. It's meeting yourself. And maybe, just maybe, there are parts of you still waiting to be discovered in the quiet.